Story 1. How lucky I am to have something that makes saying goodbye so hard. Winnie the Pooh by Alan Alexander Milne. Story 2. When a person cannot find a deep sense of meaning, they distract themselves with pleasure. Viktor Frankl. Story 3. Mine is from Albert Einstein. Weak people revenge. Strong people forgive. Intelligent people ignore. Story 4. By my pretty floral bonnet, I will end you. My days of not taking you seriously are certainly coming to a middle. Story 5. The very existence of flamethrowers proves that sometime, somewhere, someone said to themselves, I want to set those people over there on fire, but I am just not close enough to get the job done. George Carlin. Story 6. In the beginning, the universe was created. This made a lot of people very angry and was widely regarded as a bad move. Douglas Adams. Story 7. If you always do what you have always done, then you will always get what you have always gotten. Story 8. Sometimes Dolores being difficult is all a woman has to hold on to. Story 9. Life is essentially an endless series of problems. The solution to one problem is merely the creation of another. Mark Manson. Story 10. Never underestimate the power of unintelligent people in large numbers. Story 11. Comparison is the thief of joy. Do you remember who you were before the world told you who you should be? You accept the love you think you deserve. Story 12. Use your job to fund your business. Use your business to fund your freedom. That is the plan anyway. Story 13. Some people feel the rain, others just get wet. Bob Marley. Story 14. Please read the message in its entirety before taking action. Story 15. Anytime I see something screech across a room and latch onto someone's neck, and the man screams and tries to get it off, I have to laugh because what is that thing? Story 16. The biggest thing you can give people is your time because it is the only thing in life, the only currency, that you actually never get back. This person on YouTube said it. Looking at his channel, it seems like he has deleted the video where he said it. Story 17. Horace Walpole in a nutshell, as best as I remember. This world is a comedy to those that think, a tragedy to those that feel. Story 18. I'm not religious, but this one is my favorite. Our deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure. It is our light, not our darkness, that most frightens us. We ask ourselves, who am I to be brilliant, gorgeous, talented, fabulous? Actually, who are you not to be? You are a child of God. Your playing small does not serve the world. There is nothing enlightened about shrinking so that other people won't feel insecure around you. We are all meant to shine as children do. We were born to make manifest the glory of God that is within us. It's not just in some of us. It's in everyone. As we let our own light shine, we unconsciously give other people permission to do the same. As we are liberated from our own fear, our presence automatically liberates others. Marianne Williamson. Story 19. The mystery of life is not a problem to solve but a reality to experience. Story 20. A ship is safe in harbor, but that is not what ships are for. Story 21. The reason that the rich were so rich, Vims reasoned, was because they managed to spend less money. Take Boots, for example. He earned $38 a month plus allowances. A really good pair of leather boots cost $50. But an affordable pair of boots, which were okay for a season or two and then leaked badly when the cardboard gave out, cost about $10. Those were the kind of boots Vims always bought and wore until the soles were so thin that he could tell where he was in Ankh-Morpork on a foggy night by the feel of the cobbles. But the thing was that good boots lasted for years and years. A man who could afford $50 had a pair of boots that would still be keeping his feet dry in 10 years' time, while the poor man who could only afford cheap boots would have spent $100 on boots in the same period and would still have wet feet. This was the Captain Samuel Vims' Boots theory of socioeconomic unfairness. Terry Pratchett, Men-at-Arms. Elves are wonderful. They provoke wonder. Elves are marvelous. They cause marvels. Elves are fantastic. They create fantasies. Elves are glamorous. They project glamour. Elves are enchanting. They weave enchantment. Elves are terrific. They beget terror. The thing about words is that meanings can twist just like a snake, and if you want to find snakes, look for them behind words that have changed their meaning. No one ever said elves are nice. Elves are bad. Terry Pratchett, Lords and Ladies. Story 22. When someone shows you who they are, believe them the first time. Maya Angelou. I really live by this. It has very rarely led me astray. I do leave room for people to have a bad day or moment, but in general, I find that people do not change, and once I see who you are, it is not changing for better or worse. Story 23. Something I was told when I was young, and it has saved me on more than one occasion. Don't get involved with someone who is emotionally unstable. Story 24. English, do you speak it? Jules Winfield. Story 25. Be who you are and say what you feel, because those who mind do not matter and those who matter do not mind. Theodore Geisel. Story 26. Lack of planning on your part does not constitute an emergency on mine. If you cannot dazzle them with brilliance, baffle them with nonsense. A common mistake that people make when trying to design something completely foolproof is to underestimate the ingenuity of complete fools. Story 27. Time is an illusion, lunchtime doubly so. The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. Notoriety was not as good as fame, but was much better than obscurity. Good omens. The first rule of Italian driving: what is behind us is not important. Gumball Rally. Story 28. Be yourself. Everyone else is already taken. Oscar Wilde. I love the simplicity and truth in this one. Story 29. These mountains that you are carrying, you were only supposed to climb. Najwa Zebian, Lebanese-Canadian poet. Story 30. It's better to live a life full of oh wells than a life full of what ifs. Story 31. I'd rather remain silent and risk being a fool than open my mouth and confirm it. Abraham Lincoln. Story 32. I fell in love with her courage, her sincerity, and her flaming self-respect. And it is these things I believe in, even if the whole world indulged in wild suspicions that she was not all she should be. I love her, and it is the beginning of everything. F. Scott Fitzgerald. Reminds me of my wife. Story 33. Never try to teach a pig to sing. It wastes your time and annoys the pig. Story 34. There are decades where nothing happens and weeks where decades happen. Story 35. The best argument against democracy is a 5-minute conversation with the average voter. Winston Churchill. Story 36. If you do not know where you are going, any path will take you there. Story 37. Do today what others will not, so you can do tomorrow what others cannot. Jerry Rice. Story 38. Getting old is not for the faint of heart. John Wayne said this. I am 57 years old. He was right. Story 39. We are all victims of our own interpretation. Winston Churchill. Story 40. What happens when we die? I know that the ones who love us will miss us. Keanu Reeves. Story 41. One of my recent favorites from God of Ragnarok, out of all places. To grieve deeply is to have loved fully. Faye. Story 42. You are not obligated to be the same person you were 5 minutes ago. Story 43. Two possibilities exist. Either we are alone in the universe or we are not. Both are equally terrifying. Arthur C. Clarke. Story 44. I am somehow less interested in the weight and convolutions of Albert Einstein's brain than in the near certainty that people of equal talent have lived and died in cotton fields and sweatshops. Stephen Jay Gould. Story 45. I need a father, I need a mother. I need someone older and wiser to cry to. I talk to God, but the sky is empty. Sylvia Plath. Story 46. So do all who have lived to see such times, but that is not for us to decide. All we have to decide is what to do with the time that is given to us. Gandalf. Story 47. Whenever I watch television and see those poor, starving children all over the world, I cannot help but cry. I mean, I would love to be skinny like that, but not with all those flies and death around. Mariah Carey. Story 48. On a long enough timeline, the survival rate for everyone drops to 0. Chuck Palahniuk. Story 49. When life isn't treating you well, take down your pants and slide on the ice. Sidney Friedman, Mobile Army Surgical Hospital. Story 50. You miss 100% of the shots you do not take. Wayne Gretzky. Michael Scott. Story 51. As God is my witness, I thought turkeys could fly. Arthur Carlson, Weekday Kitchen Radio Program. Story 52. Build a man a fire and he will be warm for a day. But set fire to that man and he will be warm for the rest of his life. Terry Pratchett. Story 53. A toaster is just a death ray with a smaller power supply. Fallout New Vegas. Story 54. George Bernard Shaw said, "The single biggest problem in communication is the illusion that it has taken place." Story 55. Never let your schooling interfere with your education. Mark Twain. Story 56. Hello, babies. Welcome to Earth. It is hot in the summer and cold in the winter. It is round and wet and crowded. On the outside, babies, you have got 100 years here. There is only one rule that I know of, babies. God damn it, you have got to be kind. I tell you, we are here on Earth to fart around. And do not let anybody tell you different. Kurt Vonnegut. Story 57. I have two. On your left, Steve Rogers, Winter Soldier / Sam Wilson Endgame. It is our choices, Harry, that show what we truly are, far more than our abilities. Albus Dumbledore in Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets. They both hang in my classroom. Story 58. I have seen things you people would not believe. Attack ships on fire off the shoulder of Orion. I watched C-beams glitter in the dark near the Tannhauser Gate. All those moments will be lost in time, like tears in rain. Time to die. Story 59. Elizabeth Gilbert. You are a child of the universe, no less than the trees and the stars. You have a right to be here. Story 60. Mines from a song called Refuse Resist by Sepultura. Silence means death. Stand on your feet. Inner fear your worst enemy. Story 61. We all change if you think about it. But that's good. You have to keep moving, asking as you remember the people you used to be. 11th Doctor, Doctor Who. Story 62. You learn something new every day. Get busy living or get busy dying. Everywhere you go, there you are. Story 63. When the argument is lost, slander becomes the tool of the loser. Story 64. Don't run. Nobody exists on purpose. Nobody belongs anywhere. Everybody is going to die. Come watch television. Morty. Story 65. I have two. What stands in the way becomes the way. I do not hate people. I just feel better when they are not around. Charles Bukowski. Story 66. Life isn't a problem to solve, but a reality to experience. A lie spreads around the world, while the truth is still putting on its boots. How lucky I am to have something that makes saying goodbye so hard. Your friends mean nothing. I have seen why you cheer. Story 67. An expert is a person who has discovered through personal experience all the mistakes that can be made in a very narrow field. Niels Bohr. It is a good way to view failures as a path to success. Story 68. The modern conservative is engaged in one of humanity's oldest exercises in moral philosophy, the search for a superior moral justification for selfishness. John Kenneth Galbraith. Story 69. Everyone is jealous of what you have, not how you got it. Jimmy Carr. Story 70. Let me never fall into the vulgar mistake of dreaming that I am persecuted whenever I am contradicted. Ralph Waldo Emerson. Story 71. If you end up with a boring, miserable life because you listen to your mother, your father, your teacher, your priest, or some man on television telling you how to do your tasks, then you deserve it. Frank Zappa. Story 72. It is not the situation that makes you unhappy. It is your thoughts about the situation. Story 73. When you put a gun in a child's hands and send him off to war, you incur an infinite debt to him for what he has done to his soul. From the Kevin Seitz book, The Things They Cannot Say. Story 74. I believe in Christianity as I believe the sun has risen, not only because I see it, but because by it I see everything else. C.S. Lewis. Story 75. In the depth of winter, I finally learned that there was in me an invincible summer. Albert Camus. Story 76. Nature is cruel, but we do not have to be. Temple Grandin. Story 77. Do or do not. There is no try. Master Yoda. Even a small green Jedi knows when it is time to get things done. Story 78. My ex-wife still misses me, but her aim is improving. You see, that's funny because marriage is difficult. Story 79. Success is not owned, it is rented, and the rent is due every day. Story 80. When someone shows you who they are, believe them the first time. Maya Angelou. Story 81. When you are up to your waist in alligators, today is the first day of the rest of your life. Terry Pratchett. Story 82. Odd, though, all these dealings of mine with myself. First I have agreed a principle with myself, now I am making out a case to myself and debating my own feelings and intentions with myself. Who is this self, this phantom internal partner, with whom I am entering into all these arrangements? I ask myself. Michael Frayn. Story 83. They grew gaunt and lank under the white suns of those days, and their hollow burned-out eyes were like those of noctambulants surprised by day. Crouched under their hats, they seemed fugitives on some grander scale, like beings for whom the sun hungered. Even the judge grew silent and speculative. He spoke of purging oneself of those things that lay claim to a man, but that body receiving his remarks counted themselves well done with any claims at all. They rode on, and the wind drove the fine gray dust before them, and they rode an army of graybeards, gray men, gray horses. The mountains to the north lay sunwise in corrugated folds, and the days were cool and the nights were cold. They sat about the fire, each in his round of darkness in that round of dark, while the idiot watched from his cage at the edge of the light. The judge cracked with the back of an axe the shinbone on an antelope, and the hot marrow dripped smoking on the stones. They watched him. The subject was war. The good book says that he who lives by the sword shall perish by the sword, said the black. The judge smiled, his face shining with grease. What right man would have it any other way? He said. The good book does indeed count war and evil, said Irving. Yet there are many a bloody tale of war inside it. It makes no difference what men think of war, said the judge. War endures. As well ask men what they think of stone. War was always here. Before man was, war waited for him. The ultimate trade awaiting its ultimate practitioner. That is the way it was and will be. That way and not some other way. He turned to Brown, from whom he had heard some whispered slur or demur. Ah, Davy, he said, it is your own trade we honor here. Why not rather take a small bow? Let each acknowledge each. My trade? Certainly. What is my trade? War. War is your trade. Is it not? And it isn't yours? Mine too. Very much so. What about all those notebooks and bones and stuff? All other trades are contained in that of war. Is that why war endures? No. It endures because young men love it and old men love it in them. Those that fought, those that did not. That is your notion. The judge smiled. Men are born for games. Nothing else. Every child knows that play is nobler than work. He knows too that the worth or merit of a game is not inherent in the game itself but rather in the value of that which is put at hazard. Games of chance require a wager to have meaning at all. Games of sport involve the skill and strength of the opponents, and the humiliation of defeat and the pride of victory are in themselves sufficient stakes because they inhere in the worth of the principles and define them. But trial of chance or trial of worth, all games aspire to the condition of war, for here that which is wagered swallows up game, player, all. Suppose two men at cards with nothing to wager save their lives. Who has not heard such a tale? A turn of the card. The whole universe for such a player has labored clanking to this moment which will tell if he is to die at that man's hand or that man at his. What more certain validation of a man's worth could there be? This enhancement of the game to its ultimate state admits no argument concerning the notion of fate. The selection of one man over another is a preference absolute and irrevocable, And it is a dull man indeed who could reckon so profound a decision without agency or significance, either one. In such games as have for their stake the annihilation of the defeated, the decisions are quite clear. This man holding this particular arrangement of cards in his hand is thereby removed from existence. This is the nature of war, whose stake is at once the game and the authority and the justification. Scene. So war is the truest form of divination. It is the testing of one's will and the will of another within that larger will which, because it binds them, is therefore forced to select. War is the ultimate game because war is at last a forcing of the unity of existence. War is God. Brown studied the judge. You are crazy, Holden. Crazy at last. The judge smiled. Story 84. It is better to keep your mouth closed and let people think you are a fool than to open it and remove all doubt. Story 85. The only thing you can change about the past is how you feel about it in the present. It is from Gundam 00, but it stuck with me. Story 86. Never trust a man who would not try a tea cozy on his head if left alone. Billy Connolly. Story 87. Be curious, not judgmental. Ted Lasso quoted Walt Whitman, and it stuck with me. Story 88. The most common misunderstanding about communication is that it has occurred. I think maybe it was George Bernard Shaw. Story 89. That is the thing. I do not think I believe in deep down. I kind of think all you are is just the things that you do. Diane Gwynn, Season 1, Episode 12 of BoJack Horseman. Story 90. What you do not see with your eyes, do not witness with your mouth. Story 91. Family. I love how people think that word entitles them to absolution from the people whose lives they ruin. We owe you nothing. Story 92. Lack of planning on your part does not necessitate a crisis on mine. Story 93. If you do everything right, no one will know you did anything at all. Story 94. While it is always best to believe in oneself, a little help from others can be a great blessing. Uncle Iroh, Avatar: The Last Airbender. Several years ago, I loaded a bunch of camping gear onto my bicycle and spent the better part of the next 7 months riding 5,300 miles, or 8,500 kilometers, around the western United States solo. Along the way, every person I met wanted to be a positive part of my story in whatever way they were able. Many kind locals opened their homes to me, providing a hot shower, a soft bed, and wonderful company over a delicious home-cooked dinner. Drivers would see me stopped on the side of a desolate road and pull over to offer an extra bottle of water when I was miles from the next town. Neighbors in the next campsite, after seeing me arrive on that monster of a bike, would come over to ask about my travels. I would give them a summary of where I had come from and where I was going, and they would invite me to join them around their fire to exchange food and beer for my stories. It goes without saying that daring to ride a bicycle across much of a continent was the chapter of my life in which I believed in myself more strongly than ever before or since. It was also the time I relied most on the help of others, and I truly was blessed to have experienced that. Story 95. No one comes to your door and bangs on it to give you money. You have to go to that door and earn it. If you can work hard all your life, that is an amazing thing. Sir Alexander Ferguson. I have this quote written above my laptop and it helps me push myself and achieve my best. Story 96. We mortals are shadows and dust. Maximus. Shadows and dust. Gladiator. Story 97. Only two things are infinite: the universe and human stupidity, and I am not sure about the former. Story 98. I do not need another step between me and toast. Mitch Hedberg. Story 99. The problem is not the problem. The problem is your attitude about the problem. Story 100. The meek shall inherit the earth if that is all right with you. Story 101. If I ate soap, I do not eat it because I did. No, I did not. Story 102. I regard you with an indifference closely bordering on aversion. Robert Louis Stevenson. Story 103. One who speaks does not know. One who knows does not speak. Close the mouth. Lao Tzu. Story 104. Razors cause pain. Rivers are damp. Acids stain you. Drugs cause cramps. Guns are not lawful. Nooses strangulate. Gas smells awful. You might as well live. Resume by Dorothy Parker. Story 105. Travel is fatal to prejudice, bigotry, and narrow-mindedness. Mark Twain. Story 106. Those who dance are crazy to those who do not hear the music. I first saw this quote in a George Carlin book. It has become my motto. Story 107. Remember, the light at the end of the tunnel may be you. Aerosmith, amazing, outro. Story 108. Boats are safe in the harbor, but that is not what boats are made for. Story 109. Don't chase money. Chase moments in time. Dan Saltman. Story 110. Some lose all mind and become soul insane. Some lose all soul and become mind intellectual. Some lose both and become accepted. Charles Bukowski. Story 111. Love is like a fart. If you have to force it, it is probably a bad idea. Peter Griffin. Story 112. Comparison is the thief of joy. Theodore Roosevelt. Once I learned about this quote, I have been much happier by not comparing different things to each other. Story 113. I would give my life for a man who was searching for the truth, but I would gladly kill a man who thinks he has found the truth. Luis Buñuel. The biggest problem in the world today is that the stupid people are so sure of themselves while the intelligent folk are so full of doubt. Bertrand Russell. These are from memory, so they may be slightly off. Story 114. You are who you are when no one is looking. This keeps me thinking about my integrity all the time. Story 115. One of them is definitely, how lucky I am to have something that makes saying goodbye so hard. Story 116. Remember, if the women do not find you handsome, they should at least find you handy. Story 117. If you do not stand for something, you will fall for anything. Story 118. Bob Sweeney. There was a moment like this when I used to blame everything and everyone for all the pain, suffering, and terrible things that happened to me and my people. I blamed everybody, white people, society, God. I didn't get any answers because I was asking the wrong questions. You have to ask the right questions. Derek Vineyard. Like what? Bob Sweeney. Has anything you've done made your life better? Story 119. Sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never harm me. Story 120. They are working a 25-hour shift at the factory level of professional incompetence, my grandmother said. Story 121. I cannot rewrite history because you are offended by it. Story 122. Be careful, child, of the doll made of glass, for if you hold her too tightly, she will break and you will bleed. Aaron Quinn. Story 123. These fools are everywhere, restrained by emotions and morals. They deserve to be manipulated by rules. What's sadder is that when they see others not being restrained, they jump out and criticize, trying to impart these morals to people, not allowing others more freedom than themselves. In this process, they even enjoy this ridiculous moral superiority and bliss. These people have bodies full of abilities, and some even have higher cultivation than him, but for what? They are just pawns, merely restrained dogs. What truly stalls a person's success is not talent, but mindset. Any organization, once a person is born, imparts their morals and rules, constantly brainwashing. Those who want to surpass humanity's achievements have to break this restraint on their mindset. Sadly, most people are trapped by this their entire lives, using it to move forward with motivation and even using their chain collar as a symbol of pride. Fong Yuan on Societies, Chapter 127. Humans are like isolated islands, floating in the sea of fate. Human encounters are like the collision of these lonely islands. Once they touch, there is an effect. Sometimes, the islands stick together in the name of interest, kinship, friendship, love, and hate. But eventually, they separate, walking towards destruction. This is the truth behind life. Fong Yuan about Loneliness, Chapter 131. Humans only live for 100 years. It is as unreal as a dream that ends instantly. What is the point of a person living in this world? No more than just being on a journey and witnessing interesting things. Although I do not want to die, I do not fear death. I am already on my right path. I have no regrets even if I die. Fong Yuan Clearing by Ning Bing's Confusion About the Meaning of Life, Chapter 169. Man, no matter which world they live in, lives to conquer. Conquer the enemy, conquer themselves. Fong Yuan after slaughtering multiple rank 4 Gu masters and conquering the battlefield, Chapter 542. Story 124. Do what you have to do in order to do what you want to do. Story 125. We humans do not understand compassion. In each moment of our lives, we betray it. Yes, we know its worth, yet in knowing we attach a value to it. We guard the giving of it, believing it must be earned, plan MS. Compassion is priceless in the truest sense of the word. It must be given freely, in abundance. Stephen Erickson. This series changed my whole perspective of the world. Story 126. From Leonard Cohen. And so, my friends, be not afraid. We are so lightly here. It is in love that we are made and in love disappear. Story 127. Joy. This medication makes you feel numb. Use only in an emergency. Story 128. Yesterday is history. Tomorrow is a mystery. But today is a gift. That is why it is called the present. My grandmother used to say these gems all the time. She was like a uniquely wonderful automobile covered with bumper stickers full of wisdom. She was my mother's mother and one of 3 women in my life who laid my foundation in faith. Another favorite of mine from her: no friendship, relationship, or partnership can sail without the 3 C's. Compromise, communication, commitment. Funny. After all these years, I just noticed those words all have a hard C sound. Thanks, Nanny. My favorite famous quote. The coldest winter I ever experienced was July in San Francisco. Mark Twain. And lastly, I heard this from an 87-year-old woman who had just won a wet t-shirt contest. Honey, I never liked flies until I opened one. Have a fantastic weekend. I am heading to a psychic fair today. My aunt's sister passed a few days ago, and then a good friend passed yesterday. I am going to see if I get any messages. Goodbye. Story 129. Life is like a Fiat Bravo. Sometimes it will bring you a lot of joy, and sometimes it will disappoint you greatly, but you should never give up on it. Story 130. To believe in an ideal is to be willing to betray it. Krya. I think it means we should not be scared to learn about views that oppose our own, for if we truly believe in our ideals, then we should not fear them being challenged. Story 131. I would rather regret the things I have done than regret the things I have not done. Lucille Ball. I say this to myself when I want to do something but I am scared. Story 132. The wise do in the beginning what fools do in the end. A fortune cookie I received at a Chinese restaurant in Dearborn, Michigan, almost 20 years ago. I know it does not count as a quote, but someone wrote it. Story 133. I have never met someone who was not important or did not matter. Story 134. Never feel bad for saying no to something or someone. Think about it every day. Story 135. In basketball, there are 2 things, winning and misery. Patrick Riley. Story 136. From the movie Christine. Brand new she had the smell of a brand new car. That's just about the finest smell in the world. Except maybe for something else. Story 137. It gets easier. You just have to do it every day. Have it tattooed on me. Story 138. The heart has its reasons, of which reason knows nothing. Blaise Pascal. Story 139. Count not the number of breaths you take, but the moments that take your breath away. Story 140. What stands in the way becomes the way. Marcus Aurelius. It is my only tattoo. Story 141. I would not say it is my favorite quote, but it is an interesting and funny one that I read a few weeks ago. Over the years, I have come to believe that the laws of physics cease to apply in only 2 places: singularities in Hollywood. Avi Loeb. Story 142. I'm sorry, but I can't assist with that request. Story 143. He must have thought it was White Boy Day. True romance. Story 144. If your compassion does not include yourself, it is incomplete. Jack Cornfield. Story 145. Apply generously and stay alive. Haymitch from The Hunger Games. Story 146. I want something good to die for, to make it beautiful to live. Queens of the Stone Age. Story 147. For a man to achieve all that is demanded of him, he must regard himself as greater than he truly is. Johann Wolfgang von Goethe. Story 148. I must be willing to give up what I am in order to become what I will be. Story 149. I pointed to the stars, and all they saw was the tip of my finger. Heard from an African literature professor. I take it as, experience life for yourself, and when you consider others, try to see the whole. Story 150. In the end, we are all just chalk lines on the sidewalk. For the time I have been given, I am what I am. Story 151. Ellen Marie Wiseman said, we may not have it all together, but together we have it all. In her book, The Orphan Collector. I have a large family, and this has always made so much sense to me. Story 152. The time you enjoy wasting is not wasted time. Bertrand Russell. Story 153. It took more than one person to give me the name Shanghai Lily. Story 154. Change is permanent. The Bhagavad Gita conveys a similar message. Story 155. Cannot just live that negative way, then make way for a positive day. Bob Marley. Story 156. The best is the enemy of the better. Results are the teachers of fools. Sometimes I do what I want to do. The rest of the time I do what I have to. Story 157. One of my drill instructors in boot camp said, you want to fight or have sex? Either way, I am going to be on top. Story 158. It is all about falling in love with yourself and sharing that love with someone who appreciates you, rather than looking for love to compensate for a self-love deficit. Eartha Kitt. Story 159. It is better to remain quiet and appear foolish than to speak and remove all doubt. Story 160. If you find yourself in a fair fight, your tactics are poor. Probably John Steinbeck. Story 161. I don't work for free. I am barely giving anything away. Run the jewels. The best laid plans of mice and men often go awry. Robert Burns. But the modern term I like a bit more. The best laid plans fail upon implementation. Story 162. There is only one God. His name is death, and we say only one thing to death. Not today. Story 163. 200,000 on a house valued at 500,000, or what are we talking about? Story 164. If all the world is a stage, I want better lighting. Coming from a theatrical lighting director. Story 165. If you want what you have never had, you have to be willing to do what you have never done. Supposedly from Thomas Jefferson. I find it to be a hard truth. I still struggle to push myself to do things I know are necessary to get what I have never had because they are difficult for me. What I like about it, though, is that it keeps me from saying, why me? Or why not me? As often I can trace it back to what I have never done. No dates? I have not put myself out there repeatedly enough because I do not like rejection in any form. No long-term relationship. I have not been willing to compromise or put up with what you have to endure to have one. No jacked body. I have not put in the long-term exercise discipline, etc. Story 166. I can be changed by what happens to me, but I refuse to be reduced by it. Maya Angelou. Story 167. Economics is astrology decorated with calculus equations. My email signature. I can't remember who I stole it from. Story 168. I get my kicks above the waistline. Sunshine. Murray Head. One night in Bangkok. Story 169. You are neither. You are an errand boy sent by grocery clerks to collect a bill. Walter E. Kurtz. Story 170. Plans are worthless, but planning is everything. Dwight D. Eisenhower. Story 171. The only limit to our realization of tomorrow will be our doubts of today. Story 172. It's a hard life picking stones and pulling teeth. But sure as God has sandals, it beats fighting men with treasure trails. Story 173, tragedy is when I cut my finger. Comedy is when you fall into an open sewer and die. Story 174, war does not determine who is right, only who is left. Bertrand Russell. Story 175, you have to do things. You have to take risks. It is the only way to find out who we really are and what we want to do with our time on this earth. Even if we fail, what better way is there to live? Story 176. If we chase perfection, we might catch excellence. Vince Lombardi. Story 177. Liebe Kinder, gebt fein Acht, ich habe euch etwas mitgebracht. Haben ist besser als brauchen. Story 178. To attempt to change the world without changing your inner conversations is to struggle against the very nature of things. Neville Goddard. Story 179. You think me dead on an old gravestone in a local old graveyard. So ominous. Story 180. The greatest glory in life is not never falling but rather getting up every single time we fall. Story 181. Watch your pennies and the dollars will take care of themselves. Story 182. Don't waste your time on jealousy. Sometimes you are ahead, sometimes you are behind. The race is long and in the end, it is only with yourself. Baz Luhrmann, everybody's free to wear sunscreen. Story 183. A woman drove me to drink, and I never had the common courtesy to thank her. Story 184. What am I in the eyes of most people? A nonentity, an eccentric, or an unpleasant person? Somebody who has no position in society and will never have, in short, the lowest of the low. All right, then, even if that were absolutely true, I would one day like to show through my work what such an eccentric, such a nobody, has in his heart. That is my ambition, based less on resentment than on love in spite of everything, based more on a feeling of serenity than on passion. Though I am often in the depths of misery, there is still calmness, pure harmony, and music inside me. I see paintings or drawings in the poorest cottages, in the dirtiest corners. My mind is driven toward these things with an irresistible momentum. Vincent van Gogh. Story 185. Take love wherever I find it and offer it to everyone who will accept it. In this coming year, I will seek knowledge from those wiser than me and try to teach those who wish to learn from me. I love being alive and I will be the best man I possibly can. Dwayne Allman. Story 186. Paranoid? Probably. But just because you are paranoid does not mean there is an invisible demon coming to eat you. Story 187. This is offensive impertinence, up with which I will not put. A nameless bureaucrat complaining about another nameless bureaucrat who, in turn, was complaining about the first nameless bureaucrat ending a sentence in a preposition. Later, it was attributed to Winston Churchill, like every other quote from the era. Story 188. I am fond of pigs. Dogs look up to us. Cats look down on us. Pigs treat us as equals. Winston Churchill. Story 189. Life is like a peanut butter sandwich. Without bread, things get sticky. Story 190. Some people do not understand that they do not understand it. It has really changed my approach to the way I interact with people. Story 191. It is easier to do the wrong thing and harder to do the right thing. Story 192. Lost time is never found again. Acceptance is the answer to all of my problems today. Story 193. Hope is a good thing, maybe the best thing, and no good thing ever dies. Tim Robbins, Andy Dufresne. Story 194. Is God willing to prevent evil but not able? Then he is not all-powerful. Is he able but not willing? Then he is malevolent. Is he both able and willing? Then where does evil come from? Is he neither able nor willing? Then why call him God? Story 195. In the end, we will remember not the words of our enemies, but the silence of our friends. Martin Luther King Jr. Story 196. Never attribute to malice what you can also attribute to stupidity. Story 197. I like this one from Abraham Lincoln. It is better to be silent and have everyone think you are a fool than to open your mouth and remove all doubt. Story 198. Life is a waste of time. Time is a waste of life, so take the time to enjoy yourself and have the time of your life. Story 199. Basically, anything from Forrest Gump. My wife is very annoyed when we pass any body of water and I say, "It's shrimp all in these waters." Story 200. Repugnant is the creature who squanders his ability to lift an eye to heaven, conscious of his fleeting time here. Story 201. Every point of view is useful, even those that are wrong, if we can judge why a wrong view was accepted. Legion Mass Effect 2. Story 202. If you want to delete a mistake from the past, you are deleting a piece of yourself because no matter how small the mistake is, it has had an effect on you. Story 203. I love to be alone. I have never found a companion as companionable as solitude. Henry David Thoreau. Story 204. The truth is like poetry, and most people dislike poetry. Story 205. If you are lonely when you are alone, you are in poor company. Jean-Paul Sartre. Story 206. I don't know the secret to success, but the secret to failure is trying to please everyone. Don't look up who said that, though. He is less popular now than he was at the time. Story 207. People do not care how much you know until they know how much you care. Story 208. If you cannot fix it with a hammer, it is not worth fixing. My dad, who in reality was quite handy. Story 209. Music is the one physical entrance into a higher realm of knowledge that includes humanity, yet humanity cannot comprehend it. Ludwig van Beethoven. Story 210. When you have done things right, people will not be sure you have done anything at all. Futurama. Story 211. Hand-to-hand combat is the basis of all fighting. Only a fool trusts their life to a weapon. Story 212. Domineering roof apparatus imminent sparkle towering smart ink north nose. Story 213. Always remember, you are braver than you believe, stronger than you seem, and smarter than you think. Winnie the Pooh. Story 214. Trying is the first step toward failure. Homer J. Simpson. Story 215. Attitude is the difference between an ordeal and an adventure. Story 216. Life is as extreme as you want to make it. SpongeBob SquarePants. Story 217. Albert Einstein's quote, "There are only two ways to live your life. One is as though nothing is a miracle. The other is as though everything is a miracle." Story 218. Alan Watts never ceases to amaze me. I love all his quotes. Story 219. Patriotism is a virtue of the vicious. Unknown but attributed to Oscar Wilde. Story 220. It is all fun and laughter until someone laughs and has an accident. I have no idea. Story 221. Perfection is when you do many things well. From Pierre White. Story 222. Deserving has nothing to do with anything. Life just falls on you like rain. Joe Abercrombie. Story 223. The only thing necessary for the triumph of evil is for good men to do nothing. Edmund Burke. Story 224. The sun shone, having no alternative, on nothing new. Samuel Beckett. Murphy. Story 225. If you expect disappointment, you will never be disappointed. Michael Jordan. No Way Home. Story 226. Words build bridges into unexplored regions. Yes, I am aware of who it is from. It is a genuinely good quote. Story 227. What other people think about me is none of my business. Story 228. The poor have periodically objected to being governed badly. The rich have always objected to being governed at all. G. K. Chesterton. Story 229. Better to remain silent and be thought a fool than to speak and remove all doubt. Maurice Switzer. Twain and Lincoln have also been credited, but Maurice Switzer is the origin. Story 230. Growth and comfort do not coexist. But as someone with imposter syndrome, I am not on the outside looking in, I am not on the inside looking out, I am in the dead center looking around. Kendrick Lamar. Story 231. On life. Fill what's empty, empty what's full, scratch where it itches. Alice Roosevelt, daughter of President Theodore Roosevelt. Story 232. 1. Thought planted a brick and thought a house would grow. 2. Whoa, Safari. Story 233. Baby, please. I am not from Havana. Sheriff Bart, played by Cleveland Little, is seduced by Lily Von Stupp, played by Madeline Kahn in Blazing Saddles. Story 234. Everything we hear is an opinion, not a fact. Everything we see is a perspective, not the truth. Marcus Aurelius. Story 235. Hey, I have something to say. It is better to burn out than to fade away. The Corgon Highlander. Story 236. The world is changed by your example, not by your opinion. Story 237. I know you gentlemen have been through a lot, but when you find the time, I would rather not spend the rest of this winter tied to this couch. Story 238. If they wanted to, they would. No idea who said it, but it is 100% true. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.